don't know what a credenza is.
I don't have one.
The Lion King got the lion's share.
Tonight is a turning point. It is a rallying cry. It is a call from the hardworking men and women of Wisconsin to the people of America. Of the 17 candidates who started this race, a terrific, talented, dynamic field, 5 have now endorsed this campaign. We've got the full spectrum of the Republican Party coming together and uniting behind this campaign.
So how did Trump lose this bad? The same reason he's been doing so good. It took someone as bullheaded as Trump to smash the PC culture, make valid points, and reach millions. But it's the same bullheadedness that's resisting a change in course. Trump's earned the loyalty of many, but he's squandering it, making them think they might remove that tattoo before the ink dries. He keeps making supporters scramble, explain, and backtrack. Again, has there ever been a candidate who needs so many volunteer spokesmen? And as brilliant a marketer he is, he really misread how to scale his product beyond a narrow target market. Ignoring the guardrails of criticism, he's surrounded by those who only nod. Too many yes men ends in a sound no from everyone else. Let's go to his concession speech. Oops, he didn't give one. Rather than say something humble, gracious, and funny, he released a weird, angry statement. Its message, nothing is ever his fault. And he calls Cruz a Trojan horse. But a Trojan horse is someone who acts one way to get in and then acts another way after. Like telling people you'll deport millions and then winking at the press. His reactions are impulsive, and it foretold what would happen when the race narrowed. It gets old. But Wisconsin isn't the end, and it could be a new beginning for Trump. Right now, old Trump can't win the general, but maybe new Trump can. He'll need help, and not from the usual suspects. All right, Dana, is this a turning point for Mr. Cruz?
That's what he called it. He said it's a turning point, a rallying cry, and he gave a speech last night in which he finally, I think, started to say that he had a general election message, and he ended by saying Hillary Clinton, you know, here we come, and there's rousing applause. He was able to take a deficit to Donald Trump in February and turn that around to a very significant win yesterday in Wisconsin. A couple of things I noticed last night in the exit polls, that for the first time in these contests, Cruz beat Trump among non-college degree holding and blue-collar voters. Those had usually all gone to Trump. The other thing that Cruz was able to pick up last night in Wisconsin that he had not elsewhere was somewhat conservative. Very conservative had mostly been with him, but he also added somewhat conservative to that to his win. And so I don't know if he can keep that going, but the momentum certainly was feeling like it was on his side last night.
Kimberly, what are your thoughts?
You know, I'd say your monologue, you hedged your bets, Vegas style, because you're saying that he could come back from this, which, of course, he is still the front runner, right? And he's got a tremendous game advantage going forward with the states that are remaining on the plate. So if he can do what he needs to do, run the table in New York, get over 50%, that's going to be very strong positioning for him as well. Pennsylvania, California, there's still a lot of play left here. Yeah, perhaps maybe a concession speech done in the right way would have been helpful, but I think right now it's all about focusing on strategy, what you need to do going forward, because in the meantime, like when someone leaves the state and there's still some carcass with some meat left on it, Cruz is going back in and he's picking it. He's picking it clean, and he's getting more delegates, and he's saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So that's his strategy going forward. And in the end, yeah, all the delegates are going to matter. It's going to be a numbers game down to the finish line. What I see here is that with New York especially, if Kasich and Cruz can work together in some meaningful way to be able to prevent Donald Trump from getting the 50%, that's going to be helpful ultimately to Cruz.
Good point.
Yes.
Eric, what do you think? Do you think he needs to change any kind of strategy, or
who, Trump?
Yes, Trump.
No, he's winning. So you're in your monologue, you said he leaves his supporters needing to scramble and explain. Do you realize 21 million votes have been cast on the GOP side and 8.3 million have been cast for Donald Trump? That means 8.3 million people, you just said, I guess they need to scramble and explain. I think they might beg to differ with you. Trump's getting 39% of the vote. Cruz is getting 30% of the vote. Trump's getting 45% of the delegates. Cruz is getting 32% of the delegates. The guy's still winning, and as Kimberly astutely points out, April 19th, he might end up with 95, all of them in New York. And April 26th, a week later, 175 delegates. He's winning in every single, according to Real Clear Politics, every single one of those contests. So
why did he do his speech
reevaluate that after those 2 weeks, perhaps. Now, if he comes out of those 2 weeks with substantially fewer delegates than what it looks like right now, then maybe, then maybe you have to go very hard for that June 7th, California and a couple other big states.
Wanzo, should he have done a speech after?
Yeah, I think, look, it's not that he needs the airtime, but I think it would have looked good. And also, he had a real message. His real message afterwards came in that, I guess it was an email in which he said
he sent a letter out. Yeah.
He thought that Cruz was not just a puppet, but a Trojan horse for the GOP establishment. And if he wants to make that case, he can make it, because there's a lot to be said about the kind of super PACs that came in to support Ted Cruz in Wisconsin. So I think there's a legitimate argument here. He didn't want to make it. I guess it made it look as if he was, you know, his mouth had sour grapes in it and he was staying away from the cameras and just angry. But I think that the key point here for me is it's now going to be harder for him to get the 1327, the number needed to achieve outright victory before the convention. This makes it more likely we're going to have an open convention, and then you're going to be in for all kinds of shenanigans, as Eric regularly points out. So what happened last night is Cruz really doesn't have a chance to win outright, but he and the Republican establishment succeeded in blocking, stop Donald Trump at all costs, and they stopped him in Wisconsin. I don't think they can stop him, to pick up on Kimberly's point. I don't think they can stop him in New York. I don't think they can stop him in what they call the Acela corridor here on the East Coast. He's going to do pretty well. But we did see today in polls that Ted Cruz is up 20 points on national polls. So maybe the three-quarters, or was it two-thirds of Republicans who don't vote for Donald Trump, you know, are coalescing. Will Cruz be that unity candidate? I don't know.
70% aren't voting for Ted Cruz.
Well,
I mean, that aren't voting for is such a misnomer. I mean, he's whatever. Look, you're right on all of those points, but why say they stopped Donald Trump in Wisconsin with 42 delegates when you have 300 delegates coming up in a couple of weeks that are heavily in favor of him? I mean, that's the argument you make after those.
There's a good look. The demographics in Wisconsin should have been helpful to Donald Trump.
Why? Why is that?
The working class.
Well, they were exactly the same demographics as Michigan. If you look down, do you want to disagree with me?
No,
accurate.
I'm saying Wisconsin's a very liberal state. It's a very liberal state, and
not among the Republicans.
But in Michigan, if you look at in Michigan, if you look at the income level, the number of people voting in the primary that were $100,000 or less in annual salary, it's the same. Evangelicals, it's the same. Somewhat conservatives, the same. A month ago, a very good argument by the Trump campaign was that they would do well in those Rust Belt states. With Michigan and Wisconsin looking very similar, that could have actually been true in Wisconsin. But something did happen between February and last night. And Trump had been up in the polls over Cruz in Wisconsin by about 8 to 9, almost 11 points in February. And that flipped in April. So I would say, yes, I would suggest that might show that you might need a change. I think there's another point that should be made here, which is when you're a lifelong Republican, you've always voted Republican, you want so much to win the White House this next year. You're looking at electability. Cruz won that last night for the first time also. And because Rubio had won before, so he's benefiting from other people not bidding in the race.
That's very true.
There was reports yesterday in Politico that were not disavowed by the Trump campaign about a lack of infrastructure and campaign staff in key states like Ohio, which is a must-win state. If you have a responsibility as the front runner, or even like the second or third in command, that you have to be able to run a good campaign in those key states, and you can't turn that on just like that in August. You got to be there every single day, picking up as many as you can, because if the election comes down, like it usually does, to Ohio, you have to be in there. So I think there's definitely changes that the Trump campaign needs to make, and I think Trace Gallagher actually tonight has a report that there are rumors that there are staff going to be added.
Well, even before you get to the general, don't forget the hunt for those uncommitted delegates among Republicans. So Cruz is out there in that contest because he has the staffing infrastructure right now. He has people on the ground, plus he has the help of the Republican establishment. They're going after those uncommitted delegates. Trump is losing even in states where he won the majority of the vote. He's losing delegates.
You know, there's a good reason to back and support Ted Cruz, and there are other reasons to back and support Ted Cruz. Our friends Glenn Beck, Mark Levin are backing Ted Cruz because they like his constitutional conservatism. They like the guy. They like his message. That's the reason you back Ted Cruz, and I get that. And I would agree with them on that. But this whole idea of backing Ted Cruz so you get a contested convention so you can play around with who knows what happens at the convention is the wrong reason to back Ted Cruz. You're dividing the Republican Party and will only guarantee or seriously assist a Hillary Clinton POTUS 45 by doing so. And that's just my opinion.
But well, can I disagree with that on one thing, on this electability point? Because in all of the polls, in fact, Kirsten Powers was asked last night, who do you think that Hillary Clinton would most want to run against now? Just 4 months ago, in January, February, the Hillary campaign was saying, my gosh, we don't want to run against Trump. Now they've changed their tune because they see the polls consistently show that she would beat him by about 11 points. The only person that she loses to compared to Cruz and even Kasich. So I think that there is a point to be made on the general election thing. If you are Glenn Beck or Mark Levin or any other sort of lifelong Republican that's saying, I want to preserve the chance to win, that would be another reason to support somebody that could beat her.
Yeah, but is the establishment getting behind Cruz because they want to back Cruz?
What's the motivation?
I feel like establishment, but is Glenn Beck and Mark Levin now considered establishment? Because the word has become meaningless.
I clearly define the difference between the right people and the right reasons to
Well, they've been supporting him from the beginning because he's a constitutional
conservative.
conservative.
Karl Rove, the Lindsey Graham's, the other people who are lifelong Republican establishment in D.C. were backing him, not because they like him. Lindsey Graham said he wouldn't help him if Ted Cruz was choking on the Senate floor. I mean, now he's backing him.
You're talking about people that are coalescing with their nose kind of like pinched, saying, I'll do it because I don't want the alternative.
So why isn't that a good reason?
Yeah,
that's a perfectly good
strategy.
reason.
It's a strategy to then get to a convention, to have it contested, to then put in someone that they perceive as to be more moderate and more electable in a general. So that may be what's happening. There's a lot of articles written about that this is like, you know, a used job that they'll use like Cruz and Kasich to get him into the convention and then put forward somebody else, like a Paul Ryan or who knows.
All right, we got to go.